Hi everyone, I'm Zach Reinhardt, and before we get into this, I did want to talk real quick about the Baltimore Japan Arts Festival. There's a Kickstarter up, they're a couple $100 short of their goal, and they've got about, I think, like a day and a half now, 2 days, something like that, left, and I might be going. I'm not sure, but there's some cool, like, traditional and modern kind of Japanese art stuff that's going to be going on there. And the lineup is going to be expanding if they can get these $2,000 that they're asking for. And so I just wanted to mention it if you're in the area or interested in traveling to a kind of Japanese art thing. It's like a 3-day event in April. And I think they're having it either way, though I could be wrong on that. But the $2,000 is just to make it bigger. But just thought it is something that somebody on this channel might be interested in. So I thought I'd drop it here. But getting into the review, I'm reviewing the new Wednesday Campanella album, Superman. Wednesday Campanella is a 3-piece pop group that has been kicking around since 2012, but has really gotten a lot of fame more recently, kind of culminating in their signing to Warner Records and releasing an album last year called UMA that made number 20, if I remember correctly, on my top 20 albums of 2016. So I wasn't crazy about it, but it was a pretty solid album, and it was definitely something that was kind of innovative in the J-pop sphere, which is fairly rare, to say the least. Wednesday Campanella's sound is largely a kind of mishmash of various EDM genres, combined with a little bit of kind of world music, some kind of tribalish hand drum stuff that they like to throw in their songs, and a female vocalist who sings and raps, and has a fairly eccentric vocal delivery at times, where she really kind of howls and lets her voice kind of run a little wild. Now, getting into the track listing, this first song here is called Aladdin, and it was a single that was released a little while ago. It had a really fun music video of just Komi dancing in a bowling alley, of all places, and it's a really fun kind of dancey pop track. It has a little bit of a disco kind of flavor to it, and it has a lot of synths that are all really percussive and have these really kind of sharp attacks on them, and it gives it this kind of really dense, like, just clutter of rhythms, which gives the song a really kind of unique texture in the kind of J-pop sphere. The vocal melody is pretty catchy, and the delivery is on point, and it's just really well produced, and it builds up to a really fun drop that uses some kind of, I guess, like, pitch-shifted vocal samples, it looks like, that are kind of manipulated over the drop, and it's overall just a really fun, kind of lighthearted dance track that kicks off this album really well. But sadly, the album takes a little bit of a dip on the next track, Sakamoto Ryoma, which starts off with these kind of trancy, somewhat ambient synths in the intro that are then followed up with these kind of really super clean, super kind of sterilized piano chords that are kind of typical in, like, dance hall and some house music as well. And while I do like the vocal performance on here, I think Komi's delivery is on point enough, and she's an interesting vocalist, as she usually is. The synth sounds are all just really played out, like trance sounds and kind of ambient synths and plucky leads, and it just doesn't have any of the color that Aladdin or a lot of Wednesday Campanella's best songs have. It feels like Wednesday Campanella, but kind of desaturated and diluted. And Wednesday Campanella's most interesting feature is their kind of wacky, somewhat eccentric personality. And when they do these more typical kind of slower tracks, it really lacks the key to a good Wednesday Campanella song and comes off as a kind of lackluster pop track that isn't really doing anything all that interesting. But the next song, EQ-san, which was also a big kind of single with a big music video that came out recently, brings back some of that color and some of that vibrancy into the music. It has this really like heavily compressed slap bass that's really funky, and it brings in these like saxophone melody samples. The song establishes this really funky kind of driving rhythm from the very beginning, and I also just really love the rap parts on here. Komi's delivery is almost drunken, it feels like. She really kind of intentionally plays with and kind of blurs the lines between syllables and between words. She also really pronounces a lot of the words in kind of the back of her throat, which gives her delivery this kind of guttural feeling that she doesn't often use. And the beat really makes room for her to take the spotlight when she raps, as it really gets pretty skeletal on the verses. The song gets a bit of a fuller sound on the chorus with more guitar and synthesizers coming in, but I find the chorus to be a little bit lackluster. It's okay. It's a decent enough melody, but it's nothing really catchy. It's not going to stick in my ear. And while it serves its purpose well enough and I enjoy it well enough, I find that I'm really kind of just waiting for the chorus to be over so I can get back to the rap verse. And as the song goes on, I find the structure to get a little bit weird around the bridge. The chorus there kind of peters out and quiets down, and then it kind of spikes into this really kind of climactic, dramatic moment on the bridge. But rather than carrying that over into the chorus directly, they then calm right back down to like near silence and build back up into the next chorus. And it feels a bit like a kind of a cock tease. Like I kind of want to build up to this dramatic moment and then, just start dancing, but I'm not allowed to. Which I find a little weird and is a little bit of a complaint I have with the song. But overall, the song is decent. I really love the verses on here, but the choruses don't blow me away, and the kind of flow of the bridge I find a little bit off-putting. But it's a solid track, and the music video is really cool for it too. I recommend you check it out. Wednesday Campanella always has really good music videos that are always really colorful and creative and full of personality. And the next track, Onyang Kopon, is also just kind of decent, but I find this track really notable because it draws in a lot of influence from kind of future funk and footwork and juke, all genres that have had thriving undergrounds in Japan for a while now, but haven't really broken too much into the mainstream, at least until this. The song features some kind of pitch-shifted vocals that sound like they're from like an old soul song that are very reminiscent of future funk, and the kind of wash of synthesizers serve to reinforce that. And when the beat comes in, it's a very kind of clear nod to footwork and juke with the kind of upbeat four on the floor kick drum over top of some very kind of shuffling percussion that gives it a kind of jittery feeling. And while Wednesday Campanella definitely makes this sound their own with their kind of typical, somewhat house-informed drops and kind of weird melody work throughout, the nod to these kind of more underground EDM genres is pretty clear and I think significant. I think that this could be a sign that this sound is going to start breaking into the mainstream pretty soon. It's one of the reasons I tweeted out yesterday that I think we're going to have a juke idol group by the end of the year. But as the song progresses, you get the same kind of really sterile piano chords and like synthesizers that aren't really doing anything all that interesting, and the song comes off as just only decent. But I think the fact that it's addressing these sounds, these kind of off-mainstream EDM sounds, is potentially telling of what's to come in the near future. Basically, as saying, I think Wednesday Campanella is ahead of the curve and has been for a while, really. But I think they're definitely onto something and are kind of ahead of the curve of trends for J-pop. And that thought is only reinforced when Wednesday Campanella is releasing great tracks, like track number 6, Chaplin. The song starts off with these kind of out of focus, kind of low pass filtered out, descending synth chords that fade into focus as we get this kind of trap snare build that builds up into the main beat of the song, which is this weird kind of fusion of like juke and footwork and trap a little bit. You get this booming 808 sub bass that you expect from a trap beat, and it's accompanied by these layers of percussion that typify a footwork beat. Komi puts together a really nice rap performance on here, and as the song builds into the chorus, there's some really cool melodies that are done in here in kind of unison with vocals and synthesizers, and it's just a really pretty song on the chorus, but it's also upbeat, danceable, and it has that same kind of jukey, somewhat trap flavored feel to it. We also get after the chorus some somewhat dissonant synth chords that I really love that remind me a little bit of that new Takashi Hattori track, which I'm absolutely in love with. And the song builds up into a really nice, satisfying drop at the end, and it doesn't really repeat too much of its structure. It's kind of constantly evolving and introducing new sounds and textures to it. It's a really colorful song. It's really got a lot of charisma and just that kind of personality that I want from a really good Wednesday Campanella song. And it's also just really kind of cutting edge in the sounds and styles that it's referencing and using. But for every one of these like really great songs, you also get another track that's feels a little bit like filler, like track number 9, Zeami. This song features probably the most generic sound palette I've ever heard in a Wednesday Campanella song. It's got strings and piano and some really generic kind of typical EDM drums and synthesizers. The drop is definitely like huge. It's a really big kind of impact in the song, and it has some cool like drum fills in it and stuff, and the chorus is all right, but sonically there's really no experimentation on the part of Wednesday Campanella here. And when you compare it to songs like Aladdin or songs like Chaplin or the song Audrey, which is another really great song, there's just no comparison. And then we get to track 10, the final song on the album, Ame no Uzume. The song starts off with some pretty soft synths and a 4-on-the-floor rhythm with a nice harmonized vocal melody that we don't hear again until the very end. And in fact, this song doesn't really recycle vocal melodies, except I think like twice in the song. After the first vocal melody, we get a small instrumental interlude with some pitch shifted, kind of manipulated vocal samples and a beat that sounds somewhat reminiscent of future funk. And we progress into the verse, and we're given some really nice vocal melodies that are just explored for a few seconds before the song kind of moves on. And the textures are similarly constantly evolving through this song. By the end of it, we've brought in acoustic guitar, and a lot of the kind of synth textures have changed out for new ones. And even though we don't really have a chorus, the verse melody really kind of ties this all together and turns it into a cohesive track that really makes sense and progresses and flows well from beginning to end. There's some really great, really catchy melodies. I've got one stuck in my head right now. And there's a lot of really cool like play with texture on the song as well. And we return to this word that I've used a few times now, colorful. This song is very colorful. It has a lot of personality. It's something really kind of unique to Wednesday Campanella. It's a song that I couldn't imagine any other group producing. And it is a really good track as well. It has some really great melody work, and the production, as usual, is really on point. I love this song, and I love a lot of the songs on here. But for every really good song, there's also a song that I'm just kind of eh on. I'm kind of indifferent towards. The album leaves me a little lukewarm at times. But for the most part, it's a pretty solid release. And I do think that this record is going to be pretty important for J-pop moving forward. Wednesday Campanella is really kind of on the cutting edge of J-pop in kind of mainstreaming some of these more underground sounds that have been growing in recent years, sure, but haven't really broken into full-on pop mainstream status until this record. Even their last record, UMA, while I do think it's probably a little more consistent than this album, wasn't nearly as like cutting edge and forward thinking. I'm feeling a 6.5 on this album. It's definitely a solid release from Wednesday Campanella. And though there are some songs that I find to be a little lackluster and seem a little bit like filler to me, I'm not at all pessimistic about Wednesday Campanella's future. I think that this album might be a pretty big point of reference for J-pop moving forward. I mean, it's selling well, and it's interesting and creative. So yeah, if you're into J-pop, if you're into like dance music and dance pop and stuff like that, and you want to hear the kind of cutting edge, I think this might be the record for you. But that's me. This is the new Wednesday Campanella record. It's called Superman. It's an interesting record, and I definitely think it's noteworthy and solid enough, but it does have its low points, and there is just some kind of meh filler music on here as well. But I definitely think it's worth checking out, and it may be quite relevant moving on into the future. But peace.